right, so we have a new episode of Legends and Leaders, and today it's great to have Asher here. Asher, you're the CEO of HUD, a pretty important company in the Bitcoin and blockchain mining space, and also just the high performance computing space. You guys have a interesting model there, being really in dual in both spaces. And you've been an innovator in blockchain for quite some time. You were able to get Forbes 30 under 30 in the energy sector and help pioneer a lot of different ways and popularize them for clean energy and non-carbon sources for cryptocurrency mining. So I'm excited to have you here and to get into your story.
Thanks for having me, Ben. Looking forward to it.
Awesome. So early on, how did your interest in business leadership and technology begin? When did you decide, hey, I want to build stuff and be an entrepreneur?
It was actually interesting because my parents were immigrants to the US and all they wanted me to do was get a corporate job. And so being an entrepreneur wasn't top of mind, but I realized looking back that when I was a kid, I was just naturally an entrepreneur. I had like a little lemonade stand. I had a lollipop business in middle school. When we had proms, I would like set up all the buses, and so like I always did these things that in my mind weren't businesses, but it just naturally kind of were things that were fun. And so when I was in college, my mom immigrated from Shanghai, my dad from Israel, and I was the first one to go to college. And so that was a big deal. And they wanted me to just get like a stable, good paying job out of school. And so I thought I wanted to go into finance in the buy side. And I interned at a hedge fund my sophomore year and went very deep into an investment thesis that we ended up investing in as a fund. And the stock like tripled. It was a special situation. It was part of a business that was spinning out that was undervalued. And when that happened, what I realized was I wanted to build something and I didn't want to invest in other people building what their dreams were. And that was a really big aha moment for me. I went to the dean of our business school and said, look, at the time I was about I graduated college in 2 years. So I was about 2 years ahead of my friends. And I said, I want to go on a trip to Israel, China, India, and Nigeria. And each country I had a different reason. And I said, I'll email 10 CEOs I admire. I'll just go and learn. I'll go work for them. And I'll just have 10 CEOs in each country. I'll just go and learn. And he was like, that's a great idea. You should do it. And I expected him to talk me out of it and go get a normal job. And he's like, your parents sacrificed for you to have a great education so you can take opportunities like this because you could always kind of go back to getting a normal job and going down that path. And I was like, okay, so you have to help me convince my parents then because they're going to be very mad at you. And they're like, no, your parents gave you this opportunity in order for you to do things like this. And so that's what really started my entrepreneurial journey. I ended up building a business in Shanghai. And then when I sold that business and moved back to the US, shortly after started the business that I'm running today. And I think the underlying driver has been, and I'm a deep believer that too many people focus on how do I make money or how do I get rich or how do I go build something really like big rather than focusing on how do I go and create value for the world? Because if you create value for the world will compensate you by being able to build a great company, by being able to be financially well off. And so I think early on, that was something that I was lucky to have kind of found that underlying intrinsic driver of why I'm doing the things that I'm doing and building something that I think makes a net positive impact on the world, like was what drove me and allowed me to work really long hours and drive. And I think even to today, when we're running a public company, it's that same drive of it's a privilege to be able to build and to build things that we believe are meaningful and that can change different industries and society. And so that's kind of a snapshot of how I became an entrepreneur.
So why was EdTech such a great place for you to start? What drew you to education specifically?
It was happenstance. I went from high tech and when I went to Shanghai, I realized that there's a massive demand for education, but a lot of kind of the existing services weren't training people how to critically think and be lifelong learners, but rather just train them to take tests and be really good test takers. And so that was what I saw in Shanghai. And when I look back at my own journey, if you asked me in high school why I wanted to go to college, I couldn't have given you a really deep and meaningful response and reason. It was just because it's the obvious next thing to do. And I think most people go to college, spend their first 2 years kind of having fun in college, third year getting this junior internship, then their senior getting a job that they think is a good job. And then a lot of people in their mid-20s and don't love what they're doing, and they either try to pivot to go to an MBA or settle with life is I work to make money and then I have my life outside of work. And I think there's too many ways to make a living in today's world, and not doing something you're passionate about is a little bit of a waste of life. And so education I thought was really powerful, because if at an early age you can instill a love of learning for people and you can teach them how to learn anything they have their mind set on, I'm able to make an impact on a whole generation of people that can go and change the world. So in my mind, it was a way to magnify my impact on the world by helping kind of enlighten a generation of people that would go and hopefully make a great impact on the world themselves.
I think it's good that you looked at it like that. That you've been kind of viewing everything through a lens of how can I make a difference, do something positive. So Asher, you got to the point where you decided to be interested in blockchain. You founded US Bitcoin Corp. Can you just talk a little bit about what from blockchain really intrigued you to want to build in this space, and how did you see the opportunity for US Bitcoin Corp?
So I co-founded US Bitcoin Corp with my lifelong friend who we met at a Thiel Fellowship when we were 16. And he really brought the idea and said, have you looked at blockchain? Have you looked at Bitcoin mining? And I was like, no, I haven't. And he's like, look at this with me, because I think it's extremely interesting and we can build a really interesting business here. And at the time, I didn't know much about blockchain or crypto. And I kind of was like, I don't know, like, let me look into it. And when I dove deeper and deeper, it's actually interesting because that formed the DNA of our company. I came into the co-founding of the business through the energy lens, which was Bitcoin mining assets are large scale data centers that are curtailable. And those sites work really well in areas where you have a lot of renewable penetration, but not a lot of demand. And you can actually balance the volatility of the production through the wind farm and solar farm, because the wind doesn't blow all the time and the sun doesn't shine all the time. And so you can consume power when there's an excess amount of production and shut down when there's not enough supply in the grid. So I actually approached it from an infrastructure perspective on saying, this is a really interesting asset to help with grid stability. And he approached it from the blockchain side, which is, this is a really important thing to help strengthen the Bitcoin network and the blockchain. And so I think that balance is what really allowed us to build and scale this business, because within the company, we have people that are here for different reasons with different passions. Some that are Bitcoin maxis, some that love crypto and blockchain, and others that don't care and love energy and they know nothing about crypto. And so I think having that diverse set of individuals is really important in building a well-rounded business.
Definitely makes sense. So you got the company off the ground. What did you kind of do to achieve like scale? Like what enabled you to start to really get a lot more sources of energy and build it up?
Hard work. Nothing replaces hard work. I think luck is opportunity meets preparation. And so we we started with one facility and we all lived at that facility and really built and learned about the nuances of every part of the business that we were running. And I think that really set us apart when we started scaling the business and understanding which areas we had to focus on, like we building proprietary software, being really good at engineering and building our own infrastructure instead of outsourcing it, and thinking about how we can operate and manage the energy profiles better than others. And so I think for us, in terms of scaling, it was really focusing on getting deep into the business and then being able to have the right perspective to understand where we had to invest human capital and dollars into strengthening a moat. And then from there, scaling and building up the business. And we brought on the right board members, we brought on the right team members. And today, when you look at the board we have, the team we have, I mean, we really have world-class people, and great businesses are built by great people. And we got really fortunate and brought on a group of really, really amazing people who care about what we're building here.
And why did you think it was the right time to merge with Hut 8, like and combine the two companies?
We started the company in 2020 of December, and 21 was a great year. Crypto was running, the markets were great, and 22 was a hard year because crypto basically crashed and energy prices raised because Russia attacked Ukraine and natural gas prices spiked. And so when we looked at the world, we thought about if the world is heading into a recession and things are going to get worse, how do we continue to grow this business and how do we become strong? And one of the things we thought was really important was strengthening the balance sheet and making sure we had enough capital to acquire and invest in assets, even if the markets weren't strong. And then the second was access to the capital markets, because we believe that as a public company, we get cheaper access to capital in our business, which is very capital intensive. And so Hut 8 was interesting because they were actually trading near the value of their Bitcoin, and they needed an operating team. They had raised money and they had issues with the operations of their business. And for us, we needed a balance sheet and the ability to go public. So it was really a natural synergy with our footprint, our energy footprint, their balance sheet, their public access. And so that came together and created a really good combination of the two.
So the resources coming together makes a lot of sense. But why do you think, Asher, you were chosen to be the CEO of the company?
I don't know. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. We have a vision here. And the vision is we believe over the next decade that access to power will continue to increase in order to empower next generation technologies. We believe that the ability to harness power and push future generations of technology is directly correlated with making the quality of life better and humanity progress. If you actually looked at the World Bank came out with an interesting chart where it showed energy consumption per capita in every country versus GDP per capita in every country. And they plotted on like an X and Y axis. And it's essentially a linear correlation. Countries that consume more power have a higher GDP per capita. And so like that, like, and it makes sense, right? If you think about it and you go to more first world countries, you have air conditioning, you have better technology, you have all things that really like are underpinned by like being fueled by electricity that drives that innovation. And so the vision of the company over the next 10 years is how do we build a large power footprint and be at the intersection of energy and next generation infrastructure and empower that infrastructure. So we started with digital assets and Bitcoin mining infrastructure, empowering the next generation of finance. And now we're really focusing on it in this intersection between energy and AI infrastructure to empower AI and all of the impacts it's going to make on our lives in our world. And I think in the future, we talk about really far out where if Elon Musk is very successful in sending hundreds of rockets into space a day, he's going to probably need a lot of hydrogen to power those rockets. And we could build green hydrogen plants on some of our sites. And so I think what type of technological use cases can be located at the sites we own today, the opportunities are endless, and we'll see which ones actually commercialize and are a good return on investment that we can empower. But that's the long-term vision. And I think the company and the board, they all believe in that. And I think that's why they gave me the opportunity to come and lead the ship.
Definitely makes sense. You've got the big picture vision for sure. So you guys, Asher, you have resources that are split. You've got resources focused on the digital asset mining, the high performance computing. How do you balance that out of where you should apply some resources and kind of take away from some? And where do you see the long-term vision for your high performance computing and the stuff you can do there?
We're looking to aggressively grow both categories, both data centers built for Bitcoin mining and also data centers built for AI. They're two different types of infrastructures. They don't compete against each other, are not mutually exclusive. So when we lock down more power, if we want to put in an AI data center, you're spending 10 to 20 times more CapEx in order to build that data center. If it's an AI data center versus a Bitcoin mining data center. And that's important because you need to bring on a customer, you need to finance a deal, and then you need to build a data center. Where for Bitcoin mining, it's a lot cheaper to build the infrastructure, and we can start generating revenue on that very quickly because the network is our customer, not an individual counterparty. And so Bitcoin mining is a tool that we use in order to capture the value of the megawatts on our power footprint and being able to start harnessing a return on those megawatts while a higher and better use case that has a better IRR could come about. And so we look at Bitcoin mining as our ability to scale our power footprint, and then all of those assets are available for AI, whether it be greenfield before we start to build or conversion from the Bitcoin mining projects. And so we look at them as tools in order to grow and drive maximum value out of the footprint we have.
And so you can just continue to build the Bitcoin miners, and that also just generates revenue while you're, and that could even finance the other operations too.
That's right.
So you guys are based in Miami. You've got, I think, facilities in a couple of different states. Why is Miami, Asher, such a great place for you guys to be based?
Miami is a beautiful city. I actually moved here during COVID when Miami was open and really welcoming for innovation. I think since being here, the community here is a community of individuals that have moved here that are, a lot of them are relatively new to the city and to the culture, and everyone is here wanting to build and wanting to support each other. And so I think, look, at the end of the day, most of our time is spent in our office, so we can either be in Miami, in New York, or in Mars. It wouldn't make that big of a difference. I don't get outside that often, but I think building a business in a place where it's a beautiful city, the weather is great, and it allows people to have a little bit of fresh air when they're not in the office working long hours.
There's definitely a lot of benefits. I mean, the weather's pretty great, but now there's this huge tech scene. I'm sure you guys have benefited from that.
That's right, and we're close to a lot of individuals who moved out here and are part of that tech community.
Good to know. So just kind of going back a little bit on the mining aspect, a lot of people talk about clean energy and having mining that's powered by clean energy. What do you see as like the future for that? Like, what are the best types of energy sources you're most excited about, and ways that are they can optimize the process the best?
Today, we have two large-scale behind-the-meter projects at wind farms. So we have a 280 megawatt wind farm. To put a perspective, 1 megawatt is like 600 to 750 homes. So 280 megawatts is a large wind farm. And then we just announced another 205 megawatt wind farm, where by placing a data center load there, we drive a better return profile to the wind generators. And if they have better investments on the wind projects that they build, it empowers them to go and continue to build projects, right? If the projects aren't performing well, it's harder to raise capital to build the next project. And so I think we focus a lot on renewable developments because that's the lowest cost of power, and it's mutually beneficial for us and the generator. But ultimately, as we think about the assets that we build, we think about it more from a perspective of how does the grid bring on more power generation to be able to support all the demand that exists today and will exist into the future? And how do our loads create a net positive impact on that grid, whether by participating in ancillary service and demand response programs where we can be a reliable load factor that they can rely on to curtail around during areas of strain. And so I think a lot of it is not about a black or white, are you consuming clean power or not, but how do you interact with the local grids that you work with, and how do you strengthen and empower those grids to be able to continue to grow and continue to be stable.
So you're building your own power solutions, and then you're also taking advantage of what's existing. It's kind of like a hybrid.
That's right. So we have behind the meter assets where we work with existing generators and build kind of the power grids with those with those generation facilities and interconnect with the grid. And we have other projects that are just directly interconnected with the grid.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. So, what do you want to accomplish now, Asher? Like, what are some of your long-term, short-term goals for Hut 8, for yourself personally? What's your big picture vision?
I touched on this a little bit earlier, but ultimately what we want to do is be known as a company that innovates and builds and grows, specifically at the intersection of energy and next generation technologies. So, I mean, my job today is hiring great people who want to be at a place that is constantly innovating and building and growing, and is excited by the pursuit of building things that don't exist. And we want to continue to empower and help our partners build out infrastructure for AI clusters that they have, build out a Bitcoin mining infrastructure for ASIC machines that they have, and help bridge the connection between being an expert in the power industry and what the grid and generators and the utilities care about, and also being technology and infrastructure experts to understand what the use cases are, what they need, and how to create infrastructure that connects them all together and satisfies all stakeholders.
Are there specific areas in AI that you want to lean the company more towards?
We're looking at building large scale data centers. And so think massive supercomputers that can run training models. And then in the future, as we build kind of closer to tier one markets, inference to help support the workloads. And so real focus on helping kind of empower the technology from an infrastructure perspective, wherever that bottleneck may be.
And would you consider building like these facilities in Miami at all, or is that kind of other places you're looking at?
Miami's a little bit difficult. We've looked at some projects here, but just due to the amount of power that's needed and then the cost of that power and land. So we've looked at Miami, we've worked with the city and with the utility, and we're looking at power markets across all of the US, North America, and even globally.
Mhm. And just the last question that I have, you were able to get the Forbes 30 under 30 for the energy sector. It's definitely something impressive to get. What did it mean to you to receive that, and how has that impacted, your business career and where you're at?
I always grew up looking at folks who made the 30 on the 30 list and what they accomplished and what they built. I think for us, it's just an acknowledgement for uh, what what we built and what we are continuing to build. And so we're grateful for the acknowledgement and just heads down continue to focus on growing this business.
It's good to hear. Well, I appreciate you taking the time to do this. I think what you guys have already built is impressive, and it's definitely category leader and shown, what you can do with clean energy and also the kind of output you can have with that. And I'm excited to see where you'll continue to take it. So thanks for coming on.
Appreciate you for having us. Thanks, Ben.